Hey everyone, I'm Sandeep and you're watching 100 Days of Coding JavaScript. Today's video will continue to build our random password generator application in JavaScript. Today's video focus is on the CSS. In the last part of the video, we have written the HTML. Today, we are going to focus on CSS. So whenever I want to write a CSS for my application, I usually do this exercise. I take my I take my mockups actually, and I divide into different section so that I'll get the idea about the layout. So the layout for our random password generator is more of a vertical, right? So if you see here, so we have the outer container where we have different section 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all are vertically laid out, right? And inside those section, I have the horizontal layout also. So this gives me the idea so there will be like one div inside that I'm going to have this h1, then another input, then another div, and this another div. And inside those div, I know like there are different items like the label and the input. So this gives me the idea like how many flex boxes I would need, and so that I can write the CSS according to it. So we're going to write CSS, but first of all, I need some changes in my HTML file, which we are going to do. Okay, so I have the sections actually. I don't think so I need to do any changes inside the section, but we are going to put some class names so that we can point or we can access these elements to style. Okay, so I'm going to give this one a class name of panel. This is the outer panel, right? This section, I'll give it a name of panel. For heading, I'm not going to give any class name. Maybe for the form, I'll say this is password form. So let's give it a name of password form. This input is our password input, right? So we are not going to enter anything in this input, but I'm going to still give it a class name of password input. And all of these divs, right? The first, the second one, and the third one, and the fourth one. I think the first three, they're all like form fields. So I'll give it a name of form field because they look pretty similar, right? That's why I'm giving it the same class name. So I'm just going to copy this from here. I'll give to this div also, so that writing CSS for all these elements will become easier for me. So these are all different form fields. And this section, I'll probably give the name of form buttons. Okay. Let's target the input elements now. So this one will be number input, right? This one will be, okay. So this is length input, not number input. Length input, this will be number input because this is for the numbers. And the last one is for the symbols. So I'm also going to use some of the semantic element for the label and input. Like if I click on the length, right? It's not bringing the focus on my input field. So, right? So for that, we use something called, we generally, when we create the form, we use the for attribute, and we give the IDs to our input elements. So this, I'm going to give the same ID like the class name, and I'll use the same here. So now if I save and if I click on length, see that the focus is coming on this particular input field. So that is happening because of this for and ID. Probably I don't need to do it for, but let's do it for other form elements also. That's the standard practice. So I'll copy. So let's have the for, and here I'm going to give a number input. Let's give that as a ID number input. And the last one, That will be symbol input and ID of symbol input. Okay, so let's give some class name to our buttons also. Like this button will be my generate button, and this will be the copy button. Okay, so looking good. If I'm forgetting any class name, I can add it later. So we are almost ready with the entire HTML structure now, because giving this class name is part of CSS only, so that I can target all these elements and I can style these elements. All right. Now let's create this CSS file and we'll start targeting all these elements and styling those elements one by one. For that, I'm going to create a CSS file. So I'll go inside my folder. I'll create style.css and let's start writing the CSS now. So first of all, I'll start with my universal selector. So I'm going to target all the elements inside my HTML and I'll do some resets. So the minimum reset I'll be doing, like I'll set the margin for all the elements to 0 and padding to 0. And I'll use the box sizing of border box. Okay, now I need to include this CSS file because you don't see any changes here because I haven't included the CSS file. So to include the CSS file, we use something called link tag and relationship will be style sheet, and we just need to give the name of our styles.css. Now, if I save, see that some changes happened, right? Next, I'm going to target my body element and I'm going to give it a width and height first. So let's give it a width of 100% and height of 100 vertical height. So it's going to take the entire size of the screen. Okay. And let's use a background image. So I'm going to give it a background color. So I'll use the linear gradient and I'll say 145 degree. So this is the direction for the gradient. And next one is the first color. So I'm going to use a tomato color for that. And the second one will be the second color. So I'll use light pink. So this is more of a theme for our random password generator. You can see the background color has been generated, okay, inside our body element. Okay, so I'm going to give some font also. So let's give a font family of, I'll go with Arial only. This looks good. Okay, so the font is Arial, and I'm going to give my body element display flex, right? And I'm going to do some changes related to display later on. Now let's start targeting each element one by one. First, I'm going to target the panel, this panel where we have all the entire form, right? So that's the class name of panel. And panel also I'm going to give display of flex, and flex direction will be column. So when I give the flex a direction of column, what happens basically? So in case of direction column, all our elements are going to lay out in the vertical direction. So when the flex direction is row, all our elements get layout in the horizontal direction. Okay. So that's why I've used column, because I want, if I go back, right, in my mockup, right, we want all these elements to be laid out on in the vertical direction. Okay. Now I have my panel. Let's give it a max width of say 450 pixel. That will give it a width, and I'll give it a background color of white. See that? And now I want to, so this is the panel, right? And I want to center this panel within my body. So to do that, I'm going to change some of the properties inside the body. So display flex, by default, the flex direction is row. I'll say I'll use the justify content property, which is going to align the items. So in our case, that item is a panel item in the horizontal direction. I mean this direction. Okay. So this direction, I want to align my panel. So to do that, I'm going to use center. I'll save. See that the panel has came at the center. Now there's one more property called align items, right? So what align item does, it aligns the items in the horizontal direction. Okay, this direction. So the same thing I'm going to use. So align items, and I want to align my entire panel, right? This panel in the horizontal direction at the center, in the vertical direction at the center. So I'm going to save. See that we got it at the center of the screen. Now let's use some more property, like I'll give the padding of 10 pixel, 20 pixel. Let's see how it looks. Okay. Let's give it some border radius, maybe of 9 pixel. Cool. So you see the things are coming in, right? Maybe. Yep. Now I'm going to target element by element, right? If you want to give any drop shadow, you can give drop shadow also. I'm not going to give any drop shadow for now. Now let's target the next element, that's this h1, right? So I'll say panel h1, and let's give it a font size of maybe, like, let's start with 20 pixel. Okay, I would say 20 pixel is okay for the font size, or I'll go with 25 pixels. Okay. So, and I'll give some margin bottom also, so that to have this spacing, right? So 20 pixel. Okay. Now next I want to target the password form, and inside password form, this password input. So I'll copy my password input, and let's give it the width of 100%. So it will take the entire width of the form. And let's give some padding, maybe 10 pixel on the top and 20 pixel. So 10 pixel in the vertical direction. Vertical direction, I mean this direction, right? And on the both side, right? Top and bottom. And 20 pixel in the left and right, 10 pixel top and bottom, something like that. We'll use a line tool here. Okay, so margin bottom. Okay, so this one I want. See that? Now we got our input. Let's change its font size also. So maybe I'll go with 20 pixels, see how it looks. Okay, looking good. And if you want to change the border also, we can change the border also, like 2 pixel, solid, and gray color. See the border, right? And we need to give the border radius also, because we have changed the border. So maybe I'll go with 5 pixel. Okay, so the password input is looking good. Now let's target all these form fields, right? So inside each div, I have this label and input, label and input. I'm going to target the form field. And my form field is going to have the display of flex, and flex direction by default is row. I want to keep a row only, right? But I need to add some spacing, right? So to add the spacing in the vertical direction, this direction, in the horizontal direction, basically, we use the property called justify content. And I'm going to use space between. Let's try this. Okay, so that has aligned all our label and input side by side, right? So the labels are on the left hand side and the elements are on the right hand side. Now let's target the inside form field. We have, I'm going to use align items also, just to align the items in the center. Okay. Next, I'm going to target the inside form field. We have the input, right? And we have the label. So let's start with the label first. Label, and let's give it a font size of maybe, let's try 20 pixel. Okay, this is looking good. 20 pixel is good size or not. Okay, this is looking good. Length and so label is looking good, but we need to have each form field. Actually, I need to add some margin bottom also. So let me add margin bottom of 20 pixel. That will give us some spacing. And here also I'm going to add some margin bottom just below the input to have some spacing. Okay, this is looking good. Next, I'm going to target this input element. Okay, so to target this element, I will go back to my index.html. This is nothing but the length input, right? I'll target the length input and let's give it some width first. So I'll go with 120 pixel maybe. Okay. Let's give it some padding, maybe 10 pixel and 20 pixel. Okay. Maybe I'll go with less padding here in this case. And let's give it a font size of maybe 15 pixel. See how it is looking. Okay. And let's use the border also. 2 pixel solid gray and a border radius of 5 pixel. Okay, this is also looking good. Now next I'm going to target the include numbers and include special cat. This label is looking a little bit larger, so I'll go with maybe 18 pixel value. Let's see. Okay, this is looking good. Now I'll target these checkboxes, right? So to target these checkboxes, I'm going to use form field. Inside that I have the input and I'll go with type attribute equals to checkbox. This is how you can target the different element with type. So you can use the double quotes also here. So input with type equals to checkbox. I'll give it the width of 30 pixel maybe and a height of 30 pixel. Looking good. So now, and also I'm going to give it cursor or pointer so that I can go and click. When click is already allowed, but you see that cursor is coming, right? Okay, so the form is coming up, right? Looking good. And now let's style these buttons. So these are form buttons, right? So I'm going to target that element. Again, the display will be flex. Direction will be row by default. I'm going to use that. Now in this case, now I'm going to target the buttons inside my form buttons, all the buttons, right? So all the button elements, and I'll say flex 1. So it's going to stretch the buttons. See that? So each button is flex item inside this form buttons flex box or the container, right? So each button is taking the available space, and that space is actually equally distributed between two buttons. I need to have some gap between the buttons. I'll use the gap property. Let's give a gap of 10 pixel. This is looking good. Now let's style the buttons. So I know like form buttons, I'm going to target this element only. So let's give some padding. Maybe I'll go with 10 pixel and 20 pixel here. Let's give some font size of 15 pixel. Let's try that. Okay, this is looking good. Now I'll remove the border of the button, none, because I'm going to give it a border, right? And let's use a border radius of 9 pixel maybe. Let's try this. Let's go with smaller values, 5 pixel. Okay, this is looking good. I'm going to target each button individually and style it. So I'll target the first button, that is generate button. And I'll give it a background color of tomato. and color of white. Save. See that? It's coming up, right? And I'll target the copy button also. Copy button. I'll give it a background color of light pink. So I'm going with the theme, right? So I'm using similar colors here and the color of white. Save. Okay. So I see some duplicate code here, right? I'm just changing the background color. This color white is needed in both the buttons. I'm going to move this and I'm going to remove it from here. So whenever you see you're writing duplicate CSS, I have already written a lot of duplicate actually, and we're going to refactor it in some time. Next, each button is going to have the cursor or pointer. So let's do that in the button itself. And you see the pointer has came. And when I'm going to hover on the button, I wanted to have some styling for that also. So on hover of the button, I'll just change the opacity to 0.8, and I'll use the transition property also so that when the opacity is going to change, it will be smooth. It will look smooth, right? So when I hover, right, see that? It's looking good. Okay, so form is coming up very well. I need some padding here on the top and bottom of the panel. So panel, how much padding I'm using? I need to look at that. 20. So probably I'll try 20 by 20. Okay, and maybe 40 here. Let's see how it look. Okay, this is looking much better. Okay, so all the elements are looking good, I would say. This one, this input element, this is generate button and copy button, right? Now, I want to do some refactoring of my CSS. So let's do that. So if you see, right, I'm using these colors, this tomato color, right, and this light pink color at different places, like this white color, this gray color, right? And you see that tomato, light pink, and even this, there is one more thing which I was using, this gap, right? This margin bottom 20 pixel, which I was repeating in most of the elements. So we can create something called CSS variables in CSS. So I'm going to create all those variables and I'll show you the power of those variables, right? So for the colors, I'll create the color tomato. This is one of the color. So I'll say tomato, tomato, then dash dash color. Next one will be light pink. And the color will be light pink. We have some more color, right? Like the gray color. So I'll give it color gray. And we have color white also. So I'll say color white. Okay. So I have my colors. I'll create another variable for the section gap or section vertical gap, right? V gap. I'm going to give it the name of V gap, section V gap, and that was 20 pixel, right? So, okay, so I've created all the variables. Now we're going to use this variables. I'll start from here. So I'm going to replace this tomato with the variable. So we use var and then dash dash. This will be our color tomato. And the next one will be var dash dash color. This will be a light pink. Let's go down. This time I'm going to change with var dash dash color white. This margin bottom I'll change with the gap property, right? So that will be section V gap. Here also I can do the same. Section V gap. Same here. Section V gap, and this gray color I need to change, right? So color gray. Let's see once again, okay? section V gap. Then this gray color I'll replace with dash dash color gray. This white I'll change with dash dash color white. And this tomato dash dash color tomato. And the last one dash dash color light pink. Save, and you see everything is looking same, right? Now what are the advantages of using the variables in CSS, right? So say suppose I want to change the theme tomorrow, right? I want to change the theme from maybe like a purple color, purple and light green, right? And now if I just save, see that the entire application theme has been changed. I got the purple and green color. My buttons are looking different here, right? So you do the changes at one place and the entire application look can be changed. So creating variables is really good idea. You can plan it before writing your CSS also, or maybe you can pick up the duplicate colors and create those variables like how I have created. Mostly we plan it before and we use those colors. I'm going to undo this and let's keep our same theme, right? So this is color light pink. And this gap, right? So right now, if I see this gap, right, maybe I want to increase that gap to 30 pixel. See that? I can increase that gap and it has been applied at all the places. Cool. So this is really important. I mean, using CSS variable helps a lot just to change the theme, manage the layout of the application, even the gap, vertical gap, horizontal gap, all those things. So I think I'm done with the CSS part for this application. I think the application is really looking good. If I come here, right, maybe not here. I need to target this and expand it, right? So this is looking good, right? Our random password generator, buttons and everything. I think I'm going to stop here. In the next part of the video, we are going to focus on the JavaScript part. But to learn how to access all these DOM elements, right, we need to understand something called DOM. So probably in the next video, I'm going to talk about the document object model, how to access all these DOM elements. And then we will start writing the logic for our random password generator. So if I click on generate button, if I click on copy button, all those actions we are going to write using JavaScript. So a lot of things are coming. This project is going to be really exciting. So keep following. The link is in the link of the playlist is in the description. You can start from first video, right? And you can watch the entire series. I'm going to stop here. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, you take care. Goodbye. And thanks for watching the video.